Nothing Like a Good Book, celebrating authors and their books one-on-one with Mark Bishop, a Mark Bishop media production.
And welcome, everybody, to another episode of Nothing Like a Good Book, where we promote authors and really try to help discover great authors, beginners, those that would like to get out there into the scene with an important message, as with this book that we're going to be sharing, with a background in software engineering, a master's degree in engineering and computer science, and a postgraduate studies in bioinformatics, molecular modeling, and computational chemistry. My guest, Dinesh Danny, is no stranger to complex research and extensive knowledge on a multitude of subjects. He has a master's degree in science and a bachelor's in technology. Boy, what a brain, huh? Well, complete with photos, charts, graphs, and other resources, Autism Causes Unveiled. Autism Causes Unveiled. That's the name of the book, and it comes from the unique perspective of a parent, but also offers an insightful, science-based exploration of autism. Dinesh, welcome to Nothing Like a Good Book, heard and seen on YouTube and many other podcast platforms across the country. It's nice to have you.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me here today.
You're most welcome. Tell me, what is the missing link then between autism and brain injury?
Well, I am a parent of two kids on the autism spectrum. They're now like 18 years old and 16 years old. So like everybody else, I was told that autism is caused by genetics. And although, nothing genetic in the family on either side, mine and my wife's side. So, but then, we used to just go along. We had nothing else to believe, no other theories about it except what we were told. And so we continued that way. We were too busy helping our kids, taking them to the therapies right after their diagnosis, running from doctors' offices and therapists and other treatment options, looking at other treatment options. And we were pretty much busy parents. Now, the turning point came when a neurologist had ordered a MRI scan. Even that MRI scan, I kind of got to look at it by chance, right? So the doctor's office had called to say that they didn't get the report from the hospital, and so they were like, "Hey, can you go pick it up before you come in for the appointment?" So I went there, picked it up on the day before, and I looked at it, and that's when I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting to find any findings at all in there. But then it turned out that there was terms in there that I had to Google up, but then it said gliosis, white matter gliosis in various parts of his brain. And gliosis means scarring of the brain,
right.
Scar tissue in that brain. And, my heart sank when I figured that out. And then I kind of knew right off the bat that it had to do something with the birth process. And both my kids were actually induced, put through labor induction for a really long time.
A lot are, yes. A lot are in the labor, right? Induced.
Yep.
A lot of births are, yes.
A lot of births are induced these days. And it's getting to be at a point where it's getting very abusive as well.
Okay. Your book called Autism Causes Unveiled, the hidden traumatic brain injury at birth causing the autism epidemic. So, it is the first of its kind book that uncovers the true cause of the autism epidemic in full detail. There's no doubt that autism is one of the most complex and misunderstood topics in medical research. And Dinesh, you speak from personal experience, don't you, with the two kids? So you did set out to examine the brain, uncover a potential cause, and then bring this knowledge into the mainstream, right? This took a bit of guts. So this new book, Autism Causes Unveiled, you're hoping to shed the light on brain injury during birth and how it may be the missing link between brain development and autism, giving detailed descriptions and thorough research along with a variety of potential causes of these injuries. Would that be a fair assessment overview?
Absolutely. I have researched this quite a bit. Actually, I first found out about it back in 2017, right after the MRA report that set me, into a path of obsessive research into what was causing the problem. And, what I discovered was babies make their way out through the birth canal head first, right? So they're coming down through the birth canal head first. They are getting pretty much hammered out by labor induction is what is going on. Because uterine contractions are being used to open up the cervix of the mother to get that dilation going between 0 and 10 centimeters. It mostly happens automatically in a lot of mothers, but then some mothers can carry their pregnancy for way too long. They naturally they have a tendency to go on for 45, 46 weeks without any issues. Birth being such a natural thing, it varies widely among the population as to how long a mother can carry that baby. And some mothers are naturally post-dated. And what we are doing when we intervene with these birth interventions is literally, using those uterine contractions, deploying those excessive amounts of uterine contractions to get that dilation. You're literally hammering that brain inside with these contractions because the baby is coming out head first. Now, what happens after that is another factor that goes into hiding that brain injury. Now, the second stage of birth involves, pushing, right after the 10 centimeters dilation is achieved, you go into that pushing stage of labor. During the cervical dilation stage, the brain has nowhere to go. It's getting pounded right there in place. But then once the pushing starts, the brain is able to deform, take the shape of the skull, and the skull takes a conical shape.
Right.
And when that happens, when there is that change in shape of the skull, the brain deforms on the inside, and any injury, any scarring that is otherwise would be found in an MRI is no longer seen. Right. So it just happened that my second boy was a unique case where he came out without any pushing. He was my second boy. He was a smaller baby, and all those factors played into the fact that he, right after the 10 centimeters dilation, it was mostly like a stretch and tear of the cervix rather than really dilation. And then he directly slid out. So he didn't have any of that molding of that head the way even my first boy had. So his scars are intact, and they were visible in the MRI scan.
See, so there's a lot in that. I mean, I remember as a little fella, I remember my mother telling me there was a lady, a friend who had a baby, and not to touch the top of their head. There was like a little hollow at the top of the baby's head, very soft, and you had to be very careful. But we're talking inside, and there's something. I mean, you're a parent of 2 autistic children, though, right? You're incredibly passionate about connecting with those in similar places. And because of this, folks, he has formed a nonprofit called the Autism Parents Initiative, Autism PI, and he's partnered with nanbanfoundation.org. Nanban, all one word, Foundation, NANBAN Foundation. It's up on my site anyway, on markbishopmedia.com, and also his bio is there, and also his headshot and so on. And you can go to DineshDanny.com, or Dinesh Danny, I should say, all one word, www.DineshDanny, D-I-N-E-S-H, Danny, D-A-N-N-Y.com. And I'm also putting the book trailer up as well, which is very good. It covers a lot. Folks, you might have guessed, with this particular author that from the title of the book, it's a bit of a whistleblower to the true cause of the mediocre rise of the autism epidemic, which is being kept under wraps by certain elements of society. And Dinesh says that the epidemic is a medical malaise that has been unleashed on populations, mostly in the Western world, while catching up on the rest of the world where medical treatment gets modelled on Western medical systems. So, follow the leader. Medications, procedures and protocols are all copied. So how many more with autism? I mean, this gentleman knows what he's doing. He's a software engineer, 2 boys with the autism spectrum. But you regard yourself as an outsider. I mean, folks, he's not silly. He's a defense contractor, a data architect, an author, a full-time parent. He has a master's degree in science and bachelor's in technology, in addition to experience with bioinformatics, that's gene sequencing, ALGOS, I think they call it that, and computational chemistry and molecular modeling, if that isn't enough. So you've put a lot of work into this. What do you want to come out of this?
Right. I am interested in this not happening to anybody else out there. What happened to us, we will have to deal with, but I am wanting this epidemic to stop. And that's the reason we have the Autism Parents Initiative. It is a retrospective data collection effort from autism parents. Essentially, it's modeled on the same way the SEED study by the CDC is modeled, except that we are focused on the birth injury part of it, because most autism is really a birth injury. And we are looking at, the incidents at birth that seem to be causing the autism in that individual. So we are collecting data, mainly the person's individual contact information, their hospital of birth, their obstetrician that was engaged in their delivery, and information like that. And what exactly happened? Was it a placental abruption that happened, or labor induction, prolonged labor induction? All these multifactorial causes that are causing the birth injuries involved in autism causation.
Dinesh, what worries me? What worries me with all of this? Because your heart is in the right place. I've got some incredible accolades by various compliments on your writing. John Kelly, Dinesh Kelly's Autism Causes Unveiled. It's a comprehensive investigation into what is causing the burgeoning autism epidemic and what can be done to fix it. And as a parent of 2 autistic children, the author's passion for the subject is inspiring, and the information uncovered. Grady Harp says he's a medical doctor destined to become a primary resource for parents as well as medical personnel. This book is both scientifically informed as well as compassionate. Understanding Autism at Last. That's a pretty good one. That accolade is very good. Catherine Picard, another. She's a library and book connoisseur, a smart lady. Danny's book is a well-argued, nuanced, science-based, but also informed on the ground perspectives. An interesting portrait of a highly probable cause of autism that may well lead to a fresh avenue of inquiry into what we know is a devastating disorder. And, you're not a doctor, right? So
very true. See, that's the deal, right? I am a parent, so I have perspective into the entire episode of what is causing it, from start to finish. What happens with doctors is like, the mom is under the care of the obstetrician during pregnancy and birth, and then the baby gets handed off. It's a big handoff that happens between the obstetrician and the pediatrician. The baby gets handed off, and at that point, the obstetrician doesn't care anymore into what, or doesn't look into what happens to the children they treated, and then the pediatrician picks it up from there, and they don't look too much into, give too much importance to what happened at birth when they are dealing with
they're too busy. Let's get them all out. Look, I'm going to ask you something, Dinesh, out of left field, if I may. All right? Because you seem the sort of guy that I can, because I think you'll shoot straight on it. I mean, everybody's argument about it. The Kennedy business now with vaccines. What's your honest opinion?
Yes, absolutely. I believe that vaccines are a secondary cause. So essentially, what is happening is brain damage during birth, happens due to hypoxic injuries and traumatic brain injuries, with labor induction being the major cause of the traumatic part of it. When you administer vaccines to children with previous brain injury, it causes gut dysbiosis. That the blood-brain barrier in these children is compromised, and when particularly the live vaccines, they make their those live viruses can easily make their way into the brain past the blood-brain barrier because it's compromised. And then once a virus gets into the brain has a special immune deviation which makes it not attack, makes sure that the immune system does not attack that virus anymore. It's kind of, that virus gets full body immunity, and it's now flies under the radar of the immune system. So once that happens, it causes gut dysbiosis. The gut is your second brain, essentially the highest concentration of neurons in the body after the brain. So once that happens, the gut dysbiosis takes over, and the brain chemicals that the brain needs for normal functioning suddenly are not generated in the gut in the right amounts, and that it causes very visible retrogression of skills in these kids. So it's vaccines are kind of play a secondary role in the whole deal. If the child had a normal delivery and everything was fine, then the vaccines mostly are okay.
Okay, so the bottom line is what? He's right in some things, wrong in others. Is that it? I'm talking about Kennedy now. I'm talking about a very important issue, right, from your perspective. So yes, right in some, wrong in the others.
Right in few cases, and wrong in a few cases.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes.
Now, I've got a few questions I want to fire at you, so we need to answer them relatively quickly, all right? So we talked about, your sons. By the way, folks, the book is available at Amazon in Kindle and paperback formats, okay? Autism Causes Unveiled, The Hidden Traumatic Brain. Now, your sons, we touched on about the MRI scans back up your research. In what ways do the systems of autism and brain damage overlap? Okay, we touched on that. What else did I write? Oh, what are the main contributing factors then to brain damage? Well, you really talked about that with the cervix and the pushing and the this, the that. So let me ask you then, Pitocin? Is that what is Pitocin and the controversies surrounding it then?
Right. So Pitocin is the drug that was approved back in 1980 for the induction of labor. And if you look at it, that's approximately when the autism epidemic started as well. It really started taking off right after 1980. And it introduced a new possibility of brain damage that did not exist before its introduction. So that is one factor. And then there's what is happening now in hospitals is the hospital have have switched to another drug called misoprostol, which is a prostaglandin, which is also capable of causing uterine contractions. But misoprostol is an off-label use of the drug. So Pitocin has this warning in its label of brain damage, possibility of brain damage from uterine movements. It comes clearly with the warning.
Right.
And it clearly states the contraindication criteria that are supposed to be observed before, and if they're not, then you end up with brain damage in the baby. So it clearly has those labels, and it is the only drug that is approved for live birth of a baby. Now, misoprostol is an abortion drug. It is not approved for labor induction. However, hospitals use it all the time.
Right.
And it doesn't come with the warnings needed for a live baby birth. So obstetricians are not looking at this, they are not even aware that they are causing this kind of damage.
Yeah, this is not good. Surely to God someone would bring it up to them. I mean, I don't understand how there's no communication based on this. I mean, you're going to get heck out of this. You're going to get roasted. From a lot of people, you need to stand up and, because you do believe in, I was going to ask you a parent's perspective. How can it differ from a medical professional? Well, you've just answered it for me. Our medical people do wonderful work. They do wonderful work, but little things like this are a concern.
Right. So what happened was, in 2000, there was protocols that were put in place in hospitals once the obstetric community became aware that, okay, this is causing brain damage. They were not really loud about it. But sometime in the mid-90s, they seem to have put in protocols in place to address this. They want you to stop induction at a certain number of contractions. And I'm going in full detail in the book, about this whole episode here. But
see, the thing is with you, what gets me is this, you're not bound by medical boards or, professional interests, right? You're coming from strictly the standpoint of a parent, with a couple of kids who took extra interest and maybe just fell into something that, perhaps God wants everybody to know once and for all. This book, I think you're going to be asked to speak. You're going to be asked, do you have slides and everything that you can do to, hundreds in a room and show this? Do you think you can visually?
Absolutely. I can litigate a case.
Yeah.
I can totally litigate a case against it. Because, I've run this scenario in my head and I've talked to hundreds of other autism parents in the same boat. It's not just me. There is literally hundreds and thousands of parents that are in the same boat.
Right.
And they're all very supportive. Doctors are supportive except for the obstetricians. They're
interesting.
Obstetricians are the only ones that are a little bit tight-lipped about it. All other doctors, general physicians, pediatricians.
So what are the 4 types of autism then that you can put forward?
Right. So the 4 possible ways you can cause brain injury, right? So that's why our autism causation is very controversial, is because it's multifactorial. There are different ways to damage that brain and cause autism symptoms. And autism is defined from the symptomatic side. So it's not really a disease if it doesn't have a single etiology, a single cause of what is causing it. But then this one has multiple causes. I've identified at least 4. I've categorized them into 4 causes in my book. The first one being traumatic brain injury. That's that accounts for the largest percentage of damage out there. It is from labor induction mostly, and then labor induction that results in a vaginal delivery, but then also labor induction for prolonged time, and then a C-section after that. After the damage has occurred. Then there's violent contractions that if they don't address, sometimes it's not even prolonged induction. It's like a couple of hours of induction and then already the kid has sustained brain damage because it was very violent contractions that were not addressed. And then improper use of forceps and vacuum suction techniques that can also introduce traumatic brain injury. And traumatic brain injury is the leading cause. At least 50 to 60% of the parents I've spoken to fall in this category. Now, there's a second category, which is hypoxic brain injury, which is oxygen deprivation, because the baby is really not breathing inside the womb. He's being supplied oxygen by he or she is supplied oxygen through the umbilical cord, and the placenta supplies that. And there can be various things that can go wrong in there, but mostly at birth. So mostly at birth, you can have nuchal cords, cord around the neck, essentially. And then there can be placental abruption, which is like placenta detaching from the uterus ahead of time. Meconium aspiration, which is baby loses control of that anal sphincter because it's sustained brain damage, but then they don't recognize it as that and continue without a C-section. So then there can be a breech birth, that can cause hypoxic damage from, again, a kinked cord or a cord prolapse. So a lot of possibilities of birth injury from hypoxia. And then there can be, there's a third category, which is basically pregnancy complications and maternal diseases during birth, during pregnancy. So I call that the gestational autism. So, infections of the uterus, things like that, and twins can be a problem. Particularly if it's twins that are sharing a placenta between the two of them, then that leads to hypoxic injury. But then it's a gestational thing that happens. And then there's a 10%, genetic disorders that result in an autism diagnosis, mainly because these genetic disorders cause malformations of the brain structures in certain cases. And those are easily identified in the MRI. In fact,
how on earth did they get on in the early days when a woman just dropped a baby in the local lake or had the baby underwater? You know what I mean? No complications, no nothing, just boom.
Right. Unfortunately, birth has become a medical event right now.
Unbelievable. You know why men can't have babies or don't have babies, don't you? We couldn't handle the pain, man. No worries. No worries. We couldn't handle the pain, I tell you. So tell me, from a legal standpoint, what cases have set precedents in a medical malpractice?
Right. So mostly the most established pathway for legal remedy for this kind of birth injury is hypoxic birth injury. That's the most established legal pathway. Hypoxic injury results in a NICU stay, a neonatal ICU stay. And lawyers, if you approach a lawyer about a birth injury case, they always want to see if you had a NICU stay. And if you did not, then they don't even want to take the case, because those are the cases that are the established pathway for birth injury cases. And traumatic brain injury, unfortunately, it doesn't fit that bill, at least not the one that happens because of abusive labor induction. So that's where we are, kind of stuck trying to prove something from scratch. And unfortunately, what happened in 2018, this protocol that was in place to protect babies from this kind of brain damage, at least there was a protocol, it was not being followed, but there was a protocol in place. And you could get obstetric witnesses to come and say, okay, your doctor did not follow the protocol. You can get an obstetric witness to say that. But what happened in 2018 is there was a flawed trial, it's called the ARRIVE trial, that came up. They did not take into account the protocols that were established previously, and they just didn't look at the long-term possibilities of brain damage. because the traumatic brain injury doesn't show up right away. The brain does not signal pain upon damage to itself. So there is no pain, there's no external indication of any trauma. And so they came in and said that after this ARRIVE trial, they said that you can induce for however long you want. And they took out those protocols in the hospital that are essentially required by that Pitocin labeling. The labeling requires that you have a protocol in place to make sure to avoid that birth injury from trauma of excessive contractions.
The baby doesn't have a lot of say in the matter, you know what I mean? Does it?
Very true, very true.
So folks, I would say, look, it's a well-researched book with a wealth of information. You should buy one. In fact, give it to your OBGYN, huh? But honestly, it's easy to get hold of. It's on... you're on Amazon, aren't you? Yeah, that's right, of course.
Yes.
On Amazon.
The book is available on Amazon, Autism Causes Unveiled. And then I have DineshDanny.com and autismpi.org, autismpi.org.
Okay, I'll put that all up on the site on markbishopmedia.com under the section of go to number 3 tab, folks, and scroll down and you'll see Nothing Like a Good Book, and audio up on YouTube as well, and all the other popular podcast platforms that you can listen to this again. So in closing, though, Dinesh, I would like to plug your initiative, the Autism PI. What are you hoping to accomplish overall with this?
I'm trying to establish all the patterns, the categories of birth injuries that result in autism through the retrospective data collection initiative that I have on the autismpi.org website. And the ultimate goal of this initiative, obviously, is to bring changes to the standard of care so that we can eliminate this autism epidemic once and for all. That is the ultimate goal. But and then obviously, once we recognize that what is causing this epidemic, then we can come up. I'm sure better treatments will emerge. Rather than researchers looking all over the place for what is causing it, and then they're looking only at genetics and everything else that is not really the true cause. So once the causes are properly recognized, then treatments will definitely follow, and that'll help over 60 million people out there that are suffering from autism.
I was going to say, how many in America a year get diagnosed with autism?
Yeah, that's at least 150,000.
150,000 bubbers. Wow.
Yes, and that number is increasing.
And around the world, global?
Around the world, about a million a year at least.
Okay. Well, something needs to be done, and I think your book is going to help it. Autism Causes Unveiled, the hidden traumatic brain injury at birth causing the autism epidemic. What a ripper. I wish you well with this. I think it's going to be a great seller. More importantly, it's going to do a lot of good work. A lot of good work. Dinesh Danny, ladies and gentlemen, on Nothing Like a Good Book. Thank you, Dinesh, and good luck with this, okay?
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me today.
You're most welcome. Thank you. You're most welcome.
If you would like to get a copy of this good book, just go to nothinglikeagoodbook.com and use the promo code BISHOP. Nothing Like a Good Book is a Mark Bishop Media production.